Hello everyone, welcome back to another video where today we're going to be taking a look at the overnight viewing figures for Doctor Who Season 2, Episode 3, The Well. And I can say it's good news this week. Doctor Who saw a viewership increase last night, and we're going to be dissecting the figures and getting right into it. But before we do, feel free to subscribe if you're new, that'd be greatly appreciated. We just hit 26,000 subscribers, which I'm so thankful for. We're going to try and get 30,000 by the end of the year. I think we can do it, so any support would be greatly appreciated as we cover regular Doctor Who content here on the channel. But with that said, let's get right into it. Ratings: Doctor Who receives boost for the third episode, The Well. I'm taking this from TV Zone. Doctor Who continued on BBC One on Saturday 26th of April with The Well, which scored overnight audience of 1.9 million. The consolidated rating, which will include iPlayer, devices and catch-up, will be released on 5th of May. So yeah, obviously, as always, this doesn't include iPlayer, devices or catch-up, and it's also worth mentioning that, this doesn't include Disney Plus either. This is just the overnight live figure for Doctor Who in the UK. Overall, Doctor Who was up over 300,000 on last week, perhaps thanks to the football which aired directly beforehand. Doctor Who is the second biggest primetime programme of the day for the BBC, only behind the football, and was fourth most watched across all channels, behind ITV's Britain's Got Talent and the 1% Club. So yeah, very interesting. Obviously, I think the viewership boost will definitely have been helped in part by the football, no doubt, and it's really good because that didn't go into extra time, meaning that Doctor Who could still air at a relatively normal time, as opposed to if it had gone into extra time when it would have aired slightly later. I do wonder though how much this viewership bump could also coincide with general good word of mouth of like the last couple of episodes, because it's no secret that the last couple of episodes have been received incredibly well overall. I'm sure I'm going to get comments saying that, oh, I thought they were crap or whatever, but broadly, I've been seeing a lot of positive reception to episodes 2 and 3 specifically. I've seen a lot of social media stuff. I mean, I said last week about the TikToks of Mr. Ring-a-Ding that just seem to be everywhere. And there's also been quite a few popular TikToks about this episode already, and it's only been out just about a day because of the return of the Midnight Entity. So here's hoping that word of mouth is spreading, that this series is an improvement. That's my general hope. Obviously, you can see here 2 million for episode 1, 1.6 million or 1.58 million, I think it was, for episode 2. I'm guessing they're just rounding up. And then 1.9 million for episode 3. So yeah, about 300,000 boost from last week in terms of the overnights. I also wonder if part of the reason for the lower overnights for Lux was due to the fact that it was Easter weekend, so people were busier, whereas obviously this week, not much is going on. Maybe that's part of the reason as well. But I do think that this is a good sign. It kind of shows that, like, Doctor Who, even if it's not at its height, has a decent hold. I do think that we're relatively, like, at the floor. I don't imagine a scenario where, like, Doctor Who's consolidated drop under, like, 2 million. I think that's exceedingly unlikely. I think around the 3 million mark in terms of consolidateds, maybe a little bit lower, is probably where it's going to hover for now. Which, is not the best result in the world, but as I said, if you consider the fact that, like, Britain's Got Talent is getting 5 million these days consolidated, and I presume about 3 million overnight in this case, I can't get too mad, because it's kind of like, if you look at the rest of the TV landscape, it's not doing that badly. And as I said, overall this evening, it was the BBC's second most watched thing after the football itself. And then obviously, in terms of overall, it was fourth behind Britain's Got Talent, which, as I've said before, has always been a bit of a juggernaut. And even that's on its relative decline, and the 1% Club, which is a game show. So yeah, overall, I think a good sign, and I hope that positive word of mouth is spreading, that this series is, so far, a marked improvement over the previous one, and dare I say it, some of the best Doctor Who we've had in a very long time. I'll be interested to see what the consolidateds are for Lux, which I presume will come out either tomorrow or Tuesday, and I will definitely be updating you guys on that when they come out, because I'll be curious to see if just the positive reception to Mr. Ring-a-Ding in particular has resulted in a bit of a viewership spike for the programme. And same goes for this episode, honestly. Not only it being good, but also seeing the return of, a fan favourite Doctor Who villain from the Tennant era may well help it in the ratings a little bit too. So, yeah, overall, I think this is a fairly solid sign. You know, obviously, I think there's no denying that the football would have done a huge amount to help this. But I also think that good word of mouth is potentially spreading, which is a very good sign. This also bodes well for episode 6, the Interstellar Song Contest, which, as you guys know, is wedged right in between the FA Cup final and Eurovision. Assuming that it doesn't go into overtime, which I'm really hoping it doesn't, that could also see a pretty big boost for Doctor Who as well. I do broadly think that the scheduling this year is actually better than last year as well. I think April is slightly earlier in the year and is just broadly a little bit better than May. Part of me does still wonder if later in the year would be better for Doctor Who overall, but that's just my own speculation on that front. Also, if you want to just talk reception, The Well is now the highest rated episode on IMDb since The Doctor Falls, receiving an 8.6 out of 10 to The Doctor Falls is 9 out of 10. I assume this will be the case until it gets review bombed by the same old people. Also, don't be surprised if this just isn't covered by any of those people. Neither the viewing figure increase nor the positive reception, because they live in a perpetual state of every Doctor Who series, you know, has to be the worst thing ever, when the reality is that's not how this series is being received broadly by a lot of people who are watching it. Thanks to Jordan for finding this. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, I covered in a previous live stream as well the fact that Doctor Who was the third most watched thing for its first week of broadcast among the 16 to 35 demographic as well. Only behind The Apprentice and Britain's Got Talent, actually above Big Brother, which surprised me, which is obviously the target market that Russell T Davies was aiming for as well. So we'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, unfortunately I couldn't find like much in terms of overnights for other programs, but if they do pop up while I'm editing this, then I will add them in after the fact. I don't expect that this boost will keep going up next week. I imagine we'll probably see a little bit of a decline, owing to the fact that obviously the football isn't on, but also the fact that it's a Doctor Light episode, you know, rather than obviously Lux being a very unique concept that's really captivated people, and The Well being a sequel to a very loved story. Having said that, however, it is worth noting that last year, 73 Yards, which was also the midpoint Ruby Sunday focused episode, was the most viewed of the season, so maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it actually will continue to climb, but I wouldn't be surprised if the overnights drop slightly next week, and I don't think that would be a particularly bad reflection on Lucky Day or anything. I just think that the boost is obviously partly due to the football and scheduling, and also, as I said, due to the hype of, oh my god, it's the mid-90, and oh my god, you know, that Lux episode was good. But hey, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. It'd be really nice if it kept climbing, that's for sure. But thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like. Subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated, and I will see you later.